Hello and welcome to the program. I'm your host, Ron Whitlock. We have with us today Hollis Rutledge, who's the immediate past president of the Texas Republican County Chairman's Association, and the executive director of that group, Tom Hoy. Tom, Hollis, thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking today about the fact that both of these gentlemen are going to be attending now their second convention of the Republican Party, and they're going to be doing that as delegates in Minneapolis-St. Paul, and you both are excited?
Absolutely.
Oh, very definitely.
Absolutely.
And you're pleased about your candidate, John McCain, the presumptive nominee?
Absolutely.
Yes.
The party was involved or not very involved in Senator McCain becoming the presumptive nominee. And I say that because both candidates, looking at Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton obviously was the party candidate of choice coming out of the party, but Obama, with all his appeal to youth and to the internet and those kinds of things, basically overcame the party's nominee, that being Hillary Clinton. Has the same thing happened with John McCain and the Republican Party, where the primary voter actually maybe brought him to the front, where at least the conservative wing of your party may not have been so excited, Hollis?
You know, I don't know what Tom's take is on it, but quite frankly, for the first time in decades, we never really had an heir apparent. We always had an heir apparent. This time,
way early on in the process.
We did not, and we didn't have a Dole, we didn't have a Reagan, we didn't have a Bush as an heir apparent. So, from my perspective, we really didn't have a one heir apparent candidate for any one big strong group
of the party or the people, either way.
Yeah, maybe there were about two or three people, candidates that might have been, aligned to, the Christian right or the conservative wing, but there was no real heir apparent per se, like we've had in the past.
I think our problem was fitting all the candidates on the stage. Frankly. And, of course, the early front runner was perceived to be Rudy Giuliani.
Correct.
He came down here into the valley and walked away with quite a bit of cash, as a matter of fact.
About $160,000, I believe.
Yeah, and his candidacy really paved the way for John McCain, because when he didn't win in Florida and he dropped out, his people had been doing some behind the scenes with the different state parties to have winner take all in a lot of the northeastern states, and those states immediately went to John McCain, which gave him a tremendous initial boost.
Now, both of you going as delegates to the convention, the presumptive nominee, John McCain, it almost would go without having to point it out to the audience that you both are going to be supporting John McCain for president of the United States.
Oh, right.
Now, you're going as a congressional representative.
Absolutely. Here's your McCain bumper sticker.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that very much. I will not put it on my vehicle because I don't do that kind of thing. Anyway, you're both going. Now, you, Hollis, if you point out if I'm not correct here, you're going as the congressional delegate for the Henry Cuellar district, which is district number 23.
Correct. Each congressional caucus, they
you were selected out of that group.
We elect 3 delegates and 3 alternates from each congressional caucus.
And you, Tom,
with District 15.
15,
yes.
Which is Ruben
Hinojosa.
Yes. And you're representing that congressional district as its delegate to the Republican National Committee.
I'm an alternate delegate.
As an alternate delegate, thank you. Now, you both are pretty well of the understanding that you represent those congressional districts and therefore the needs, concerns, and interests of the people who reside in those districts. And so therefore, let's go first of all in some of the issues that are of importance to the Hispanic families who reside along the border all the way from Brownsville to El Paso, but predominantly within the congressional districts where you represent. Now, I-69, which is the NAFTA highway, has been touted by Rick Perry, your governor in the state of Texas, by John Cornyn, who has brought a senatorial committee meeting to UTB-TSC in Brownsville to try to push making it a fast-tracked interstate highway and get that highway completed working from the Rio Grande Valley north. On that basis, do you think it's important, or do you concur enough to try and carry the message back to your convention and hopefully directly to John McCain that the completion and fast-tracking of I-69 is important to the economy of Texas, Mexico, and the nation?
Well, let me say that there's no question that an interstate highway is badly needed in our area. I mean, we are the front door, so to speak, of the NAFTA initiative of our partners in Mexico, Central, and South America. So it is critical, and certainly we join our state leadership, including our governor, who is going to be obviously participating in this convention, to convey that message to our congressional delegation, and as well as to others that will be participating at the convention.
And at a time when General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, all three going through the economic traumas, costing jobs, and all three of the big three automakers, they rely on these automotive components in their Mexico plants to get to Detroit in a just-in-time delivery fashion as quickly as possible. So the quicker those parts can get to Detroit, the more job can be saved actually in the United States.
And the U.S. plants are moving steadily southward too. So now we have a plant in San Antonio. So that's a consideration. And I-69 is important not only for business growth in an area which is one of the very fastest growing areas in the country, but it's also important for safety. I mean, we just had a hurricane come through here, and we need a route for getting people out and getting supplies in following hurricanes.
Now, we asked Barack Obama on satellite one question, and that was, Senator Obama, if you're elected President of the United States, what's going to be your policy on immigration reform and the pathway to citizenship? And this is what he had to say.
Well, I think it's very important as part of comprehensive immigration reform to have strong border security. And in some cases that means fencing or some sort of barriers. But ultimately, we're not going to be able to build a wall across the entire Texas-Mexico border. And it impinges not only on landowners there, but it's not going to be effective. So what we have to do is work with the Mexican government. We've got to improve economic development on their side of the border so that they're creating jobs and economic development that can provide prosperity for their people. We have to have virtual borders, more effective border control, more effective border surveillance, more officials and officers who are handling the issues down there. And it's also important, though, for us to crack down on employers who I think oftentimes are taking advantage of undocumented workers in order to undercut American labor. And if we do those things, as well as a pathway to citizenship for those who are already in the United States and have put down roots here, are often raising families here and have children who are American citizens or are effectively American, if we combine all those strategies together, I think we can solve this problem.
You've seen what Barack Obama's position is on immigration reform. What is the position of your party and your proposed standard bearer, your presumptive nominee, John McCain?
Well, let me say first of all that John McCain embraces the idea of a strong security component in securing our borders. No question about that. We all are obviously in favor of that in one form or fashion, either through natural barriers or through a virtual wall. Brick and mortar in itself, from my perspective, as you already know, is not going to cut it. We need a virtual wall. We need high tech. We need to use our natural river to be able to curtail that illegal immigration. Having said that, there's a component that's missing that Barack Obama may or may not support, and that is that we need a guest worker program. Without a component in our federal immigration policy for a guest worker program where we can actually have people from other countries, Mexico included, to come and work here through a legal process, that we can register them and be able to contribute to our economy, is going to be essential to have a very successful immigration policy. Reagan, as you know, back in the mid-'80s, started that process, that initiative, but it wasn't completed. And Congress literally has ignored the issue for the last 25 years. We've had this opportunity to address this problem. President George Bush is in favor of this type of initiative. Our candidate, Senator McCain, is also in favor of that initiative. I'm not so sure that in the case of Barack Obama that he's in favor of it.
A response from Barack Obama, and a question that I asked him via satellite. And the question we asked Senator Obama was this: if you're elected President of the United States, will you be in support of building the third international dam specified in the 1944 treaty with Mexico, could provide for an improvement of the natural barrier, the Rio Grande River, and that would preclude the necessity of having the border wall? Here's his response.
Well, I think it's very important for us to look at the infrastructure in the region. Levees are going to be absolutely critical, and I think we have to design those levees in a way that they can withstand a Category 4 or 5 storm. They aren't in the kind of shape that they need to be. I think it's also important for us to look at what kinds of natural barriers might be available to deal with some of the storms that could arise, because if we are oftentimes building man-made barriers, but we don't have the natural barriers that have been put in place, then we can be overwhelmed no matter how much we invest. So I think it's important for us to combine environmentally sound approaches with infrastructure improvements. That's something that has been lacking under this administration. It's something that I would make a top priority.
So here you heard Senator Barack Obama saying he would be in favor of trying to use the natural barrier, the Rio Grande River, hopefully by improving the infrastructure of this third international dam. Your reaction to that?
In our case here in Texas, obviously, we need to use all the natural barriers to be able to curtail illegal immigration. And I agree with that. The only thing that I do not hear from Barack Obama's camp, including himself as candidate, is that, as I mentioned earlier, he fails to give us a clear message as to what he is going to do in terms of a national immigration policy that in this case should include a guest worker program.
I think one of the things that has to be done, we have almost a million people a year that are allowed into this country under the current immigration quota system, if you count both those who are coming initially and those relatives of those individuals. We have about a 10,000 per year quota for all of South America, Central America, and Mexico, which is ridiculously small. We need to increase the quota to a realistic number so that we can hold people to following the legal route to come into the country.
Are you saying that your candidate and your party would try to make sure that that's accomplished in the new Republican administration if elected?
I believe so, because once there's a controlling of the border, then there's an ability to take a closer look. I think people are afraid right now to increase the quota from Latin America because so many people are coming over illegally as it is.
We have requested a one-on-one interview with Senator John McCain, get his response to these identical questions. We have not had the senator decide to hold that visit with me via satellite or otherwise. Healthcare, a big issue. I know it's important for you and the people that you talk to, Hispanic families all along the border. Many high percentages of those families have no access to health care. What would your candidate do to try and handle the problem of many families not having access to health care because they are uninsured along the Texas and U.S. border?
We obviously need to make sure that we provide good health care, but we do have, for instance, the CHIPS program that presently is administered to the state that provides for health care for children. We do have to look at closely as to how we could provide health care, because right now, as you know, counties do provide some indigent health care services. But we got to be careful in that we want to make sure that we take care of those, from my perspective, of those who are here that are citizens that need the health care. A lot of the burden right now, as you know, comes by way of county governments having to address that issue. I think we need to look at a more comprehensive plan that would involve the state and national government, besides what we've been doing locally here to take care of those indigent individuals that are presently in the border area, as they are now.
Now, the state Republican leadership cut back on the children's health insurance drastically in 2003, and then improved it back to a 12-month enrollment period in the last regular session of the legislature. Where does John McCain fit in? Because President Bush has been trying to cut that number back to a degree because there was going to be an increase. Senator Cornyn has been trying to work some number between that, and Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison has been working for a number even higher than the White House. Where does John McCain stand on this children's health insurance as it relates to the federal level on an increasing and improvement of that health care? Do you know, Tom?
I'm quite sure that he's in favor of increasing it. I would note this, though. One of the problems with the Democratic plans is that the Democrats are very closely aligned with the trial lawyers, and the trial lawyers have driven up the cost of health care in the private sector. And I think we have to deal with that. Texas is one of the few states that has come up with litigation reform to help the doctors to bring down the cost of their malpractice insurance.
Now, Hollis, you're going as a delegate for the 23rd Congressional District, which is held by a Democrat, Henry Cuellar. What does it mean being a delegate, and how does that differ from Tom Hoy, who's going to be an alternate?
Well, let me say it's the 28th Congressional District held presently by Henry Cuellar. The district actually runs all the way from the extreme western part of Hidalgo County and encompasses all the way up to Webb County, and then all the way up to part of extreme southern Bexar County and into Guadalupe County. So it's a big congressional district. From my perspective, of course, being a delegate is certainly an honor and an opportunity for us to be able to visit with other delegates from across the country and be able to meet some of the policymakers, if you will, that run our country, and be able to tell them a little bit more about where we come from and what our issues are. And so I look forward again, as has been given to me,
this is your second time.
My second time as delegate, to be able to participate in that convention.
Being an Hispanic Republican, are you going to be telling some of the other members of your party what they need to be thinking about, because there has been a significant amount of slippage as you watch the polls, the Pew Research Group and others? George Bush has gotten up to 40% following in vote totals on the part of Hispanics. To a big degree, it's considered that they may have put him into the White House. And now that number has fallen back into the 20s over the course of the last few years with immigration reform and other kinds of debates going on in the nation's capital. Are you concerned about that slippage from the Hispanic voting trends toward becoming a Republican bloc voting group, and now that seemingly is slipping away?
You know, it's too early to say because, let's face it, 30 days is an eternity in national politics. I think as the race develops and the election gets near to November, I think it'll be a pretty good barometer, probably sometime after Labor Day, in terms of how the independent vote and the Hispanic vote is going to shift. But let me say this:
so you're thinking that John McCain's appeal to independence, being the maverick of his party for so many years, may fall in the way of your candidate?
Absolutely, and the fact that he is a border U.S. Senator, and he embraces a lot more closely and is more aligned to some of the immigration policies that the Hispanic leadership has supported over the years, including the guest worker program.
Tom, explain to us what being an alternate delegate means as it relates to the different responsibilities that your compatriot here, Hollis Rutledge, has.
Certainly. The basic difference, there's one floor pass to use between the alternate and the delegate. And the alternate and the delegate have to divide their time up so that each gets his turn on the floor, and whatever votes take place while he's on the floor, he participates in that.
Now, you've told me off camera how much fun it is to go and be there. The last convention you went to was in New York.
Yes.
What do you mean by having a good time at a convention? It seems to be a lot of fun, but sometimes a lot of stress as we watch it on television at home.
Well, there were some very good times. We had a party on the floor of the Stock Exchange and went to a Broadway play. But then there were other little things like coming out in front of Macy's out of the subway, carrying all of my delegation paraphernalia that I just picked up at the host hotel with my Texas hat on. I walked out into the middle of a couple 100,000 anti-war protesters. That was not an experience I would like to relive.
Of course, in New York, the Texas delegation, a big focus of the national media because the candidate at that time was President George Bush, who was running for re-election.
That's right.
So all the national attention was on the Texas delegation. Now, in your case, Hollis, some of the old recollections, first time you went to a Republican National Convention, you were how old?
14 years old.
Wow. So
Going on 15.
So Minneapolis-St. Paul will be your 7th convention, first time when you're 14 years old.
14.
And your reaction as a 14-year-old person going to that convention was?
Well, obviously I was in awe. You know, it was a tremendous experience.
Who was running for president?
Nixon.
Uh-huh.
Richard Milhouse Nixon. And very, 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 just a great experience for me as a young man, you know. That it was an honor for me to be there. Not as a delegate, but as a guest.
Fellas, any last moment comments to the audience of what they will be watching when you guys are up there voting and sharing that pass off and on, getting on and off the floor? What should they be thinking about?
The main focus will be, of course, the nomination of the vice president candidate in the Republican ticket, and of course the nomination of the president candidate in the Republican Party.
And watch out for how much time is spent talking about energy and particularly gasoline prices.
Obviously, you're also in the platform committee when you're visiting with them, and with the candidate John McCain, you're going to be twisting his arm about fast-tracking I-69 or NAFTA highway and some of those other issues of importance in the border issue.
We will definitely do our part.
Yes. So thank you very much for coming, driving over and being with us, Hollis.
Thank you, Ron.
Tom Hoy, thank you for coming and being with us. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, adios.